The truth is that some Kenyans, a very small group of Kenyans, operate outside the law in diaspora. And unfortunately, or fortunately, usually folks get away with this. Now, these are conversations that we will not have at home for obvious reasons. However, today I'm going to open the Pandora's box, perhaps for the first time. So, as you know, laws all over the world are created for a number of reasons, often by people in authority. Some of those laws are specifically created for the purpose of promoting discrimination. For example, in America, to keep black people out of colleges, they created laws that prevented people with criminal records from applying to colleges. And then they created laws to actually criminalize behaviors in black communities. And so there are lots of laws in American books that were specifically designed to discriminate against certain people. Now, there are also lots of other laws that are just simply outdated, old, and bizarre, yet many others are just normal, typical laws, such as murder is illegal. Now, nonetheless, immigrants and Americans alike break many of these laws intentionally, and sometimes people find themselves in difficult spots and then they end up breaking laws. But I want to be very clear on one point, that Americans born and raised here are far more likely to break laws than immigrants. If you look at the numbers, there's no comparison. People who are born and raised here are far, far more likely, significantly more likely to break laws as compared to immigrants. Unfortunately, politicians sometimes present it as if it's immigrants who break laws. That is not the case. In our communities, these things are very rare. They're almost like the exception. However, they still happen. So in this video, I will share with you, probably for the first time, some of the strangest laws that I've run across and that are still in the books in different states in America. And then I will pivot to talking about the most common laws that immigrants, not just Kenyans, immigrants in general, tend to break. And of course, some of these have consequences that can be very mild, as far as maybe just getting a fine or a warning. Others are very severe felony level crimes that really get people jail time. Well, welcome to the village, friends. This morning, I'm in the village, just chilling the village style. At the beginning of the video, did you see that ice cream container? I pulled it out. I actually thought there was ice cream in it. And then, of course, inside of it, there was chicken and not ice cream. This is Village 101 for you. And I find it really interesting that the exact same thing happens in some African American household, where people use containers that are meant for one thing to store something very different. But this is just how we run in the village. We recycle things. We don't dispose of things like that. We repurpose, and yeah, that's the village for you. So if you're joining us for the first time, welcome to our channel. We are filming from Karating, a village in Kisumu County in Western Kenya. We talk about all things regarding Africans who have moved to the U.S. and those who are transitioning back to Kenya. So I hope you subscribe. It's just interesting that 70% of those of you who are watching us have not subscribed. And I recently found out that this happens in ways that people don't realize. I also found myself that there are people that I watch that I have not subscribed to, in part because I don't know. So if you're a regular viewer and you have not subscribed, can you check in the next minute or so? So if you're not subscribed, please do so. But again, like I always say, if you're not able to subscribe today, I hope you come back as a regular viewer. So let's start by talking about some of the strangest laws that are still in the books of many states. And many of these laws, I can assure you, a lot of people, especially people living in America, don't even know that they exist because they're almost never enforced. Law number one that I found really strange, that in Michigan, adultery can result in fines up to 5 years in prison or a $5,000 fine. I think if they tried this in Nairobi, pretty much everybody would be in jail. In Arizona, donkeys cannot sleep in bathtubs. It's illegal to mispronounce the name of the state, Arkansas. I'm probably even committing that crime right now. And in Florida, unmarried women who parachute on Sunday can be fined or jailed. So if you're single out there and you feel like parachuting on Sunday, That's a bad idea. So do it some other day, or just get married, then you can parachute all you want on Sunday. Don't ask me to explain. I don't know what that is about. And then in Georgia, it turns out that carrying ice cream corn in your back pocket is illegal. In Louisiana, mourners at a wake may not eat more than 3 sandwiches. So Aweno, just keep it to 2 maximum. I think this would be a problem if they tried it in Kenya. And in Pennsylvania, apparently it's illegal to catch fish with your mouth. I wonder what other body parts can be used to catch fish up there. And by the way, I used to live in Pennsylvania. I went to school up there more than 15 years ago. It was a great place to live in, especially in the summer. But I couldn't care for living in Pennsylvania in the winters. They were just too brutal for me. And apparently in Texas, it's illegal to sell one's eye. So please, whatever you do, even if you're really, really broke, please don't sell your eye in Texas. That'll probably get you in trouble. And in West Virginia, it is illegal to have an unmarried couple living together. Again, this is one of those laws you don't want to try in Nairobi. Otherwise, everybody would be in jail. And in Massachusetts, gorillas are not allowed to sit in the backseat of a car. So, Fatuma out there, if you own your gorilla, please make sure your gorilla sits in the front seat if you're going to live with your fun gorilla in Massachusetts. And then in Alabama, you cannot chain your alligator to a fire hydrant. So yes, you who owns a pet alligator, you find a place to tie it, maybe in your front porch next to the main door, or somewhere other than the fire hydrant. So let's switch back to laws that Kenyans and immigrants are more likely to break and perhaps get away with it. The first one is immigration, which is probably, in my estimation, the most commonly broken law. And a lot of it are just misdemeanors, minor stuff, but some of it can be so serious as to get you deported. And a lot of immigrants start by breaking it from the time they arrive at the visa office in Africa, where some people bring papers that are not exactly legit. People get away with it sometimes they get caught, but that happens. There are cases where immigrants worked with forged papers or papers that belong to other people, especially immigrants who don't have authorization to work. Now, that also applies to students who usually are restricted to working on campus. And so to work out off campus to make more money, sometimes people have to forge papers or use their friends' paperwork to get work outside. But immigration laws are broken in all sorts of ways. And again, the other common one is marriage for papers, where people make arrangements with American citizens, pay them, or just get help to become citizens. And usually folks get away with it, but sometimes things don't work out, and these things can actually get you deported if you're caught. And then with taxes, this is a big area of concern, where sometimes the most common issue is when folks are filing for taxes, they stretch facts to minimize the tax obligation. I wouldn't say too much about it, but those who know what I'm talking about. And I've seen cases where Kenyan tax preparers actually end up forging numbers for their customers so that customers can get bigger tax return. It's one of those things that I absolutely hate, because in many cases, the customers don't even realize that the preparers have actually forged numbers to get them big tax returns so they can keep coming to the same person. But it happens quite a bit. In a few other cases, folks don't disclose everything to our IRS or our tax authorities. And by the way, the U.S. Tax Authority requires you to report even stolen money. So if you steal somewhere, make sure you report how much you've stolen, pay tax on it. And of course, another common one is using fake addresses, where folks who live in states that don't issue driver's licenses to immigrants without paperwork can actually come to California or Washington and then use a friend's address in those states to gain driver's license. Some people can use friends' addresses to get their kids access to a school, because in most places in America, your kids can only go to specific schools based on where you live. So if you don't live in a neighborhood with a good school, you may end up using a friend's address in that area. It's highly illegal and can actually get you jail time. And then I've seen this too with the military, where when a person in the military lives in Alabama, they can use the address of a friend in California to gain bigger military benefits. It does happen because if your address is California, apparently the military gives way more money in terms of a housing allowance compared to people who live in relatively cheaper states like Alabama, Texas, and all that stuff. And then, of course, DUI. Many Kenyans, I wouldn't say the majority, but many Kenyans have problems with drinking. I even know folks who have been deported because of drunk driving. So that happens quite a bit. Speeding. Every person speeds in America. We all speeds, and the fines can vary quite a bit depending on where you're speeding, like a school zone, construction zone, and things like that. In fact, for me, at some point, I paid a $500 ticket, and not for speeding. I've never gotten a speeding ticket, even though I speed here and there. But this was because I crossed a double line, and a police officer saw me. He pulled me over, and I paid $500 just for crossing a double line. The issue of polygamy happens quite a bit. The more common one is a case where somebody has a wife in America and another at home. Happens quite a bit. Polygamy is very legal in Kenya, but it's not legal in America, even though there are very many polygamists in America too, black and white and other races. And then issues of assault happens quite a bit in all kinds of ways: family, sexual, emotional, all kinds of assault happens within families. And this is typically common where vulnerable folks are involved, especially when you have a new person who has just arrived, typically women, children, and people who are generally vulnerable. And then murder also occurs. I remember not too long ago, there was this Kale guy who killed a number of old women in Texas in some care homes, I think. He's in jail now, but yeah, he killed quite a few people. And these things happen in our community. And then wage fraud is a common one, especially for Kenyans who are employers, where they bring in folks and they either severely underpay them or they make people work for so many hours for very little or nothing at all. In fact, recently, the Swahili restaurant, a very famous Kenyan restaurant in Washington, D.C., was fined quite a few millions for wage theft. So many Kenyans who own businesses are known to do this kind of things, where they make people work for free or work for very little. And then within the home care business, you see a similar problem, but more including things like misusing clients' money, forging paperwork to make more money, and things like that. And then, of course, you have issues of child support, which is hard to get away with because you can absolutely go to jail. Well, I hope this was useful, and I will see you in the next. Thank you.